Not too long ago, my marriage hit rock bottom with a painful divorce. And you know what caused it? A ridiculously predictable betrayal. Now, to some, my story might seem pretty unremarkable. They'd probably say something like, "Well, you cheated on your wife. What are you complaining about now?" But trust me, the truth is actually the complete opposite. To start with, we didn't have kids. It used to bother me a little, but looking back now, I see it was probably for the best. My wife, Evelyn, often spent time with her best friend, who happened to be a married woman with 4 adorable daughters. At the time, it never seemed like an issue. The girls would often hang out at home or meet up at a cafe for coffee, and I never thought much of it. Sure, sometimes the conversations would take a turn, and Evelyn would drop hints about wanting a fur coat or a vacation. But honestly, I was fine with it. Considering her friend's lifestyle, Evelyn seemed pretty content, and I didn't think anything more of it. Now, I wasn't exactly flying solo either. I had a couple of friends from my student days, 2 guys who were proof of that. But the worst part, it was our family friends who ended up tearing us apart. During the May holidays, everyone decided to meet up for a barbecue by the sea. The spot was great, with barbecues set up for everyone, but it was a popular place, so you had to grab a spot early, like 8 a.m. or earlier. Evelyn, who didn't really work in the traditional sense, decided she'd go ahead and save a place for us. To make sure she wasn't bored or feeling awkward, my buddy Asher volunteered to help her out. It wasn't the first time we'd done something like this, so I didn't think much of it. The only thing different this time, Evelyn and I had just had a fight the night before. I had no idea that this quarrel would push her straight into the arms of another man. The whole day passed in the strangest way. Our friends were whispering behind our backs. Asher kept going to the beach to smoke, and Evelyn seemed to follow him every time. It did not escape me that she had completely forgotten about her family and was completely focused on her eternal friend. Evelyn spent the day staring at the ground and barely speaking. I figured it was just because of the fight, and maybe she didn't want to talk to me. But here's the thing. At the time, I didn't pay much attention to it, even when the group chat went silent after that trip. Evelyn's attitude shifted too. She was walking around, frowning, giving me these icy glares, and reacting to every little thing I did or said. My friends stopped coming by. Asher disappeared, and the other guy had some work to attend to. But Evelyn's friend, though, she seemed to have moved in with us. It escalated so much that I had to point out to the cheeky guest that her husband was waiting for her at home, and maybe it was time to round up the kids and head back to cook dinner. She shot me this look like she had something to say but hurried out, dragging her kids behind her. Before leaving, she whispered something to Evelyn, a little too loud for my taste. Think about it. And when she looked at me, the expression wasn't friendly. What am I supposed to think about? I asked, but it didn't even seem like a real question, more like I was just throwing it out there to get a reaction. The response took me completely off guard. She was talking about divorce. Just like that, 2 words and the sound of the door lock clicking shut behind her, as if I had been locked in a corridor with a venomous snake. My own wife. There was no way I'd misheard. No, she was telling me to file for divorce. I hope you told her that's not an option. No, I said I need to think about it, I replied. Evelyn slowly walked into the bedroom, leaving me standing there in the hallway, my mind racing, trying to make sense of questions that hadn't even been asked yet. The apartment was mine. Her parents lived on the other side of the country. She had nowhere to go. Well, nowhere except perhaps another man. Putting the pieces together felt like an impossible task. I hurried after Evelyn, but the door to the room was locked from the inside. "Open it," I shouted, banging my fist against the wood. The pain shot through my hand, but there was nothing but silence in return. After about 10 minutes, I calmed myself down, sank to the floor, and rested my head in my hands. It all happened so quickly that I didn't even have time to understand why. Then, from the bedroom, I heard Evelyn's voice. She probably thought I had left and was talking on the phone. All I caught were fragments of what she was saying, barely audible, so I pressed my ear to the thick door. "So we're never going to see each other again," she sobbed. "Yes, that's what I'm going to do now," someone replied, their voice soft and teary. It was Asher. A couple of minutes later, my phone buzzed. The screen read Asher. Of course, just when I needed him most, my old friend was calling. I had to pick up. After a few seconds, the call ended, but it rang again. I let it go to voicemail, but the third time I answered. "I'm busy," I snapped, more harshly than I meant to. "Brother, I'm sorry." "I get it. I'd be mad too. I'll explain everything when we meet, I swear." His voice was full of regret, like a beaten dog. But now, none of that mattered. This wasn't about us. It was about Evelyn. Evelyn took a bunch of sleeping pills. "She needs to go to the hospital. You can punch me in the face after, but this is bad." Then he went silent. I stood frozen for a moment. The news sank in slowly. A wife and a best friend. Just like some twisted joke. I didn't even want to imagine them in bed together. Without thinking, I kicked down the door. Evelyn was sprawled across the bed, hardly reacting to the noise. A doctor came soon after, cleaned her up, and kept her under observation for the night. The following evening, we returned home. The conversation was brief. Evelyn barely spoke, responding in one-word answers. "Did you cheat on me?" "Yes." "With Asher?" "Yes, a long time ago." "When?" My patience was starting to wear thin. She looked up at me, almost like she'd never seen me before. "We had a fight, and the next morning Asher was there, trying to cheer me up. He set up a tent for the kids, and that's when it happened. Our families found us there." "She said Asher was better than you," she added, her voice cold. "It was time for me to do something. Anyone in your place would have left me. But you're as active as a sack of potatoes." Asher apparently had said the same thing. "Yeah, funny analogy," I replied bitterly. "What's even funnier is that Asher doesn't even want you." She glared at me, silently forming the words "not wanted" with her lips. "He asked me to save you. I saved you. God knows I loved you. But now it's over." There was no turning back after that. I gave her money for an apartment for a month, and by the end of that month I had a divorce certificate in my hands. Asher kept his word, not continuing anything with her after that. Evelyn tried to live alone, but eventually moved back to her parents' house, and we didn't talk anymore. Even her parents never bothered to reach out. The only call I got came from an unknown number, and when I picked up, a drunken female voice started yelling curses at me. She ended with, "You ruined Evelyn's life."